Morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Okay, let's get it out there. We're getting started here. There's people all over Richmond waiting for this meeting to happen, sitting by their computers. Today we're going to have 4 of our members that unfortunately cannot make it, but joining us online are Chairman Torian. I don't see him up there yet, but he's going to, and Senator Eben, I see him. Thanks for joining us. And we're also going to have one of our consultants join also by electronic means later in this thing. So, Mr. Greer, let's get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. I'm Hal Greer, the Staff Director of JLARC. As you may recall, the July meeting is a meeting that we primarily devote to the Virginia retirement system as well as Commonwealth Savers. JLARC staff will present our semi-annual VRS update, and then you'll hear from VRS leadership. With regard to Commonwealth Savers, you'll hear a presentation on the quadrennial audit of the Virginia 529 prepaid plan, followed by an update on Commonwealth Savers by its CEO. But before we turn to VRS and Commonwealth Savers, Mr. Chairman, we'll present the findings from our review of book removals from Virginia libraries. This review was directed by joint resolutions from the 2025 General Assembly session, patroned by Senator Locke and Delegate Simon. Justin Brown led the review. Justin?
Welcome, Mr. Brown. Hope you had a good 4th of July.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Wait for these slides to come up here. As Hal said, my name is Justin Brown of the JLARC staff. And as he also said, this is coming out of a joint resolution from this past session. And unlike a lot of our resolutions, this one was fairly straightforward in the sense that it just asked us to survey school divisions about book removals, which is what we did. You can see on this slide here, we're just kind of summarizing what the resolution specifically asked us to do. So in terms of our work for this project, we started by reviewing state law and regulations and also reviewing individual division book removal policies. We also tried to talk to the various key stakeholder groups, including the Virginia Association of School Superintendents, the Virginia School Board Association, the Virginia Parent-Teacher Association, and the Virginia Association of School Librarians. We then worked with VCU to develop and administer the survey of school divisions. So before I get into some of the detail, Mr. Chairman, big picture, about 2/3 of school divisions reported to us that they did not remove any books between July 2020 and March 2025. About 1/3 reported that they did remove books, but much of that removal activity was fairly concentrated among a handful of divisions. After we accounted for books that were removed across multiple divisions, there were 223 individual or unique book titles removed during that time period. Let me just give you a little bit of background on the environment here. As you all know, we have a locally administered school system, and like many aspects of K-12, divisions have a fair amount of discretion around school libraries. The state really doesn't have any specific role in governing the selection or removal of library books specifically, but the state does set some requirements. For example, chief among these is that I believe it's a regulatory requirement. You have to have a library in each school. You also have to have a librarian who meets certain qualifications in terms of training and educational experience. The other thing I would point out, just more broadly than library books, specifically, the state does set some requirements around instructional materials. Basically, divisions have to have policies and procedures, and those should consider the perspective of teachers, parents, and citizens. And as you probably know, if you just think about this, there are some library materials that meet the definition of instructional materials, but there are many materials in libraries under the general student interest category, so are not instructional materials, but are still available to students in the library. So turning to the results of our actual survey, first of all, we asked divisions whether they have some type of policy around this, and most divisions reported having a formal policy that covers book removal. But these vary pretty widely in detail and specificity. The written report gives some commentary about what some of these policies require, but it really does vary quite a bit. The study resolution directed us to ask about designated committees to review requests to remove books. About 3/4 of divisions have something like this, and usually it consists of school or division staff and parents, but there is variation here as well. Even though there's a lot of variation in policies, it seems quite a few use a template policy, which is summarized in the note at the bottom of the slide. The process under this policy would typically start with someone making a complaint, usually to a school, and then the principal would create a committee to review that book and make a decision. But as I said, there's a lot of variation. So divisions also reported there's reviews being requested at the school board level and also just at the division-wide level. As I mentioned earlier, just less than 2/3 of divisions did not remove any books during the time period. The remaining 1/3 removed at least one book. Now, here's a breakdown showing the concentration of the book removal activity of the divisions who responded. The top 5 divisions accounted for 75% of all book removal activities, with Hanover, Rockingham, and Goochland being the top 3. I'd make a note about Rockingham indicated right at the top of their removal list that this was a temporary decision pending some policy approvals at the board level. I would also say that for those of you that are interested in your specific division or certain areas, the written report lists every division and whether they removed any books or not, and if they did remove any books, how many they removed. So this just shows the most frequently or most commonly removed books, and the written report lists all 223 titles that were removed and how many divisions removed each book. These are the most commonly removed book titles, with Gender, Queer, Tilt, Identical, and Perks of Being a Wallflower being the most commonly removed books across divisions. And this removal was kind of a mix, the removal activities were a mix of maybe at an individual school or also division-wide. It really kind of depended on which division you're looking at. So we also asked divisions why books were removed. And, we started thinking about this, and the divisions really didn't specify, for example, the exact passage of specific books that led them to remove each book. But at a high level, by far, the 2 most common reasons cited were sexually explicit content and that the book didn't meet their local standards or local policies. And what I'm just showing on the slide here, just what was reported kind of across some of the responses about, some of the example or illustrative reasons why books were removed. So I just noted that sexually explicit content was one of the main reasons divisions cited for removing a book. The study resolution specifically directed us to ask if a 2022 state law was the reason why a book was removed. And quite a few divisions reported that 2022 law was the basis for their removal decision. But in reality, that 2022 law doesn't necessarily prohibit sexually explicit content, and it certainly doesn't require or even contemplate removing a book from a school library if it does include sexually explicit content. Instead, it's quite clear to us the law requires parental notification when a library book or some other instructional material will be required, and then it gives parents the option to request alternative material for their individual child. So I think there's probably a variety of factors causing this to happen, but there's at least 2 that are probably contributing. First, it's clear the legislature's intent was not for this law to lead to removal or censoring of books. As I said, the law itself doesn't even mention library books or removal of books. And actually, when you go into the legislative history, there's a specific enactment clause in the bill that makes it very clear the law wasn't about censoring or removing books. And just for your reference, I put that here, that enactment clause on the slide in italics. Now, as you know, enactment clauses aren't in the online code of Virginia, so unless you go back into the history of the bill, it might be a little bit unclear. But again, I will say you read that law, it's quite clear that really isn't what's supposed to apply. There's also, I think, a less maybe compelling factor here is that, DOE's tried to kind of clarify this over the years a couple of times. They clarified some things about instructional content. They haven't clarified this. In terms of this law really isn't applicable to removals. So to conclude, Mr. Chairman, even though divisions, some of them have incorrectly cited this law, they do more broadly have this authority over the books that are in their division. So we're not specifically recommending anything here, but some divisions might benefit if DOE were to, for example, clarify that original memo or put out some additional guidance. But I do think there's a little bit of confusion here, but I'm not sure, practically speaking, how big of a problem it is. So those are the results of the survey that you asked us to administer to school divisions. I'd be happy to take questions to the extent members have them, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Delegate Simon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you guys for this. Again, I was one of the lead sponsors of one of the resolutions that asked for it. And I think one of the things we suspected, and when this bill was first passed, I think there was a prediction by some of us made that this is exactly how it would be read, that folks would say, hey, look, I know it's supposed to be about parents' rights and this particular parent controlling what their particular kid gets to read, but isn't there a danger that once a complaint is made, the path of least resistance for some of these school systems would be just to, instead of coming up with an alternative assignment for that kid, would be to remove the book and deprive all kids of the opportunity to read it. And it sounds like, again, this is the enactment clause, I think was thrown in, if I remember correctly, near the end to try and assuage some of us saying that's not going to be a problem. We'll throw an enactment clause in here that says that's not the intent. But what's happened, it sounds like, is the enactment clause, somewhere in the Acts of Assembly, it's recorded, but generally when as a tool that school systems have to look at, it doesn't appear. And I think what I heard you saying was, although there have been opportunities to sort of bring that enactment clause forward through memos and guidance and things like that, that just hasn't happened. The guidance that we've gotten, it continues to omit that language that says this is supposed to be about what one parent deciding what their kid gets to read, not one parent getting to decide what all kids get to read. Am I understanding that correctly?
Delegate, that's exactly correct. And to I guess, further make your point, I had to catch up to the legislative history and go back to it. And I was a little caught out or surprised when as many divisions reported this back, just not knowing the backstory. And that's because when I read the law, it just doesn't apply to removing books from school libraries. But everything you said squares with our understanding of the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Simon. Anybody else here? Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I believe there's another enactment which also requires all the school boards to have a policy in place. I think the report says that some of them have ignored that enactment as well and haven't developed policies or didn't report any. Is that accurate as well?
I believe, going off memory here, there was an enactment clause for DOE to put out a model policy, and they have done that. I believe that's what the requirement was. I will double check that.
Mr. Chairman, there's another enactment that requires school boards to have the policy in place a year after it's effectively taking place. So, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I guess just a comment. It's disappointing to see school boards all have counsel. They have attorneys that work for the school boards and guide them. And if they're not understanding how the legislative history works and how to set it up, we've had religious exemptions. We've had lots of things in place for decades and decades and decades, which is why you see in this report many school systems have had this type of review process for 20, 30, 40 years for exactly the religious exemption purposes and many other purposes of substitute assignments. I'm just frustrated to see how many school boards ignored essentially and or used the state law as an excuse to pull books. So, Mr. Chairman, if anything like me when I was a teenager growing up or my kids, you just created a great reading list that kids are going to focus in and read. So thank you.
Senator, if I might, and Mr. Chairman, to your point about that enactment clause, in some conversations with some of the groups, I do think there's a requirement to have a policy for instructional materials. And there may be some kind of confounding or confusion about that. For example, division may have that policy and they may think that covers. I don't know if that's the case or not, but they're probably, that's been a very long-standing requirement to have a policy for instructional materials, which I'm sure you probably know, but just to point that out as well.
Thank you. Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a brief question. On the response rate, 72% of schools, because I would have thought it would have been higher, quite honestly, given the issue. Is that normal, that sort of response rate?
Delegate, it's a little lower than what we like to have. And one of the reasons why we worked with the VCU survey group on this is they're fairly good at doing follow-up and emails and phone calls, and we helped them do that. I think we would have liked to see more. I also think that what that probably means is that what we have here is maybe the floor of the removal activity, and I'm sure there is some activity that's not captured in here. But to your original question, we like to see, let's say over 100 school divisions get back to us. And sometimes when we do other topics, we'll get 110, 120 divisions getting back to us.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
just a
Delegate
comment.
Herring, sure.
That is exactly why I'm concerned. I mean, this is probably the floor, and it violates the intent of the legislature, what's going on in some divisions. And it just is very concerning because access to literature is important. Parents' consent to access is very important too. So I am concerned about our intent as a legislature, what we intended is not being implemented. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Herring. Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and then a question. I'm alarmed and maybe not surprised, but alarmed that schools are eliminating authors like Kurt Vonnegut, Judy Blume, Toni Morrison, award-winning authors, or books that are part of our popular culture nowadays, like Wicked. But my question is more about the process. Do we know if any school divisions, like in Hanover, they removed 125 books? Do we know if any parents in Hanover asked for books to be removed that the school board denied, or do we know if the schools are just removing every book that someone asks to be removed?
Senator, that's I think a key question. We did not ask divisions, for example, for books that were requested to be removed and then not removed. But in the submissions of books that were removed, there were a few divisions that listed books that were challenged, and then the school or the board decided not to remove them. So there definitely is some of that going on, but I can't tell you, for example, the ratio of removal requests to removal actions. That's something we didn't ask about.
Thank you.
Yeah, Delegate Simon.
So one more question, I guess, sort of dovetails with my responsibilities on the FOIA Council. You mentioned that only a few of these divisions reported publicizing the meeting of the review committees. I'm guessing that the review committees are not public bodies, right? There's no legislative requirement. I mean, you can publicize it, but you don't even have to open it to the public, right? I mean, these things could be, there's no sort of statutory framework about, again, that would describe these as public bodies and subject them to FOIA, allow people to come, participate, comment, see what's going on or anything like that.
Delegate, that was a specific survey question, and what we're reporting out there, it was a fairly small percentage that said that they publicize or advertise. And so I'm not aware of any statutory or FOIA requirement for these specific groups. And I think part of it may be, if you can just picture this, let's say, happening at a school level. I think there's a lot of meetings at schools that just kind of come up and people don't know about them. I also think some of the over time, who sits on these groups may very well change. So they're not really necessarily standing groups. They're kind of convened when this comes up. And to your point, I'm not aware of any requirement to publicize them.
All right, thank you.
But I'm sorry, I guess I would say, conversely, I am aware of some fairly contentious discussions at school board meetings about this that would have been in the public. So it's kind of at all at the either end of the spectrum there.
Justin, in your survey of this, did you look at what public libraries did as opposed to school libraries? I think there's been some controversy over, some jurisdictions threatening to close down their public library, not their school library, their public library. I was on a board for 11 years, on a library board for 11 years, and we had procedures. And getting to Delegate Simon's point, if someone challenged a book, we had a procedure for the public to have input on whether they wanted that removed or not. And a lot of times we ask for suggestions for alternative books. If you don't like this book, what do you suggest we should have in our collection instead? And would you like to comment on any of that, or that wasn't part of this study?
Mr. Chairman, we did not survey, public libraries. The Library Association was kind enough to reach out, and we had a little bit of back and forth with them, but we just didn't get into other libraries. But to your point, it is an interesting question in terms of, is there any back and forth here or any alternative suggestions? I will say that when we talked to some of the stakeholder groups, they were I do feel like the librarians and the media specialists really try to do a good job of kind of curating things. So it's entirely possible that if something's removed, they then try to find something else that's maybe more suitable. I don't know that to be the case, but that would not surprise me if some of that happens.
Okay, anybody else?
So is
Senator
this,
Locke.
I'm sorry,
Senator
Mr.
Locke.
Chairman. Justin, so this is the final report, so the other divisions that did not respond will not have an opportunity to respond?
That is correct. We're done with this work. We made a point of, in our appendix, not only specifying which divisions removed books and which didn't, but which divisions didn't respond. So to the extent that that's useful information for people, that's in there. But we're done with the project.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I think you're going to introduce the next topic.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Kimberly Sarte, who talk about VRS.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kimberly Sarte, and I'm an Associate Director at JLARC, and the rest of today's meeting is dedicated to JLARC's oversight of VRS and Commonwealth Savers, which is formerly Virginia 529. Just as a reminder, the Code of Virginia requires JLARC's ongoing oversight of both of these agencies. So first, Alex Jansen, JLARC's new oversight analyst, will give you a short presentation of our semi-annual review of VRS. Alex started with JLARC in January and has been quickly getting up to speed, and this will be her first time briefing you on VRS. After Alex, the VRS Board Chair, the Chief Investment Officer, and VRS's Director for Policy Planning and Compliance will give you their annual status report.
Thank you, Ms. Sarte. Welcome, Alex.
Good morning. Thank you,
Is this
Mr. Chair.
your first time?
It is. I spoke to you very briefly in May, and everything went well, so I'm hoping for a continuation.
Okay, terrific.
Excellent.
Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will now turn to our semi-annual report on the Virginia Retirement System, VRS. In the interest of time, I might go quickly through some of these slides, but they are in your packet, and I'm happy to answer questions. This slide just shows you the mandate for our ongoing oversight. And I'm going to start by talking about the trust fund investments and their performance. As you probably know, the financial assets used to pay VRS benefits are pooled in its trust fund, and one of the core responsibilities for VRS is to manage the investments of those assets. The total fund performance did miss a long-term return assumption in the shorter periods, but is still exceeding in the longer term. And since VRS is a very long-term investor, those longer-term returns hold a bit more weight right now when looking at this trend, but we will continue to monitor and report back to you. The asset classes met or exceeded nearly all of their benchmarks, although some benchmarks were missed in the 1 and 3 year period, including the total fund for the 1 year period. At the June meeting, the board adopted a policy which authorizes the Chief Investment Officer to restrict some or all investments in countries designated as foreign adversaries by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. That list currently includes China, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and North Korea, but the most pressing concern right now is China. Part of the concern is that the federal government may restrict trade with China, which could include investments by pension plans, which increases risk for those investments. VRS had just under 2% of funds invested in Chinese markets and is exiting those investment exposures. And the board also approved changes to the benchmarks to remove investments in China from the public equity, and private investment partnership benchmarks. While this policy is currently largely reflective of the situation with China, it will allow VRS to effectively balance risk and returns with their fiduciary responsibilities moving forward. If there are no questions, I will turn to defined contribution plans. All right. Excellent. There are several types of DC or defined contribution accounts available to members for different purposes, as you can see, but overall, the DC plans hold about $10.2 billion in assets for our members. Nearly all investment options offered across the 3 categories of DC plans met or exceeded their benchmarks across all periods. And at the beginning of the year, VRS transitioned to use Voya as the new record keeper for the DC plans, and there are a few things to note so far. Now, hybrid members can change their voluntary contribution amounts monthly instead of just quarterly, and this change can help allow members to be more responsive to their needs for adjusting their contribution levels. There's also now a mobile app that will aid in registering, monitoring, and making changes to those contribution levels. And this is important because currently and historically there has been a lower percentage of members logging into their online accounts despite communications from VRS. One final note is at transition, Voya had made some changes to how it reconciled payroll variances, which did cause some delays initially, but Voya proactively added staff to work with VRS and employers to resolve those delays, and as of May 31st, over 99% of submitted payroll files have been reconciled.
Yeah, Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on that slide, page 11, being able to change an individual's monthly, have any idea on the cost of that? Has it done anything to the cost of the overall program?
Delegate, thank you. I can certainly look into the exact costs associated with that and do some comparisons. I don't have that number off the top of my head. Kimberly, do you?
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, please continue.
Thank you. So I will now talk briefly about the recent experience study. So the board approved changes to several actuarial assumptions as a result of this recent experience study. Overall, there were no changes to the long-term return or inflation assumptions, and there were very minor changes to several other assumptions. I just want to highlight one of them. So Valors had slower growth in salaries and the number of active members. So a change was made to lower the assumed annual payroll growth from 3% down to 2.5%. The revised actuarial assumptions will be implemented in the June 30, 2025 plan valuation, which will be completed this year and will be used to set employer contribution rates for the upcoming biennium. The revised assumptions are estimated to very slightly decrease the funded status and increase contribution rates for employers in the state plan, and these changes are expected to reduce the likelihood of future large increases in contribution rates. I do want to note that the 2025 valuation has not been completed yet, and so there may be additional changes based on that valuation that would adjust what those final contribution rates would be when they're set. And seeing no questions, I will turn by finishing to talk for a moment about some key legislation related to VRS from this past session. I first want to mention a few bills that increase access for certain public safety occupations to some benefits. So as of July 1st this year, Department of Conservation and Recreation conservation officers were added to Valors prospectively, and then also on July 1, provided that the member is the employer is a contributing employer, private police departments and campus law enforcement at private universities will now be covered under the Line of Duty Act. And starting next year, emergency dispatchers who were not already in the hybrid plan will become participants in the hybrid plan's local disability program. One other change worth noting is that judges' service will move back to Plan 2 as of July 1st next year. And finally, there are a few studies from the budget language expected this fall. So the Department of Human Resource Management is working on 3 studies from item 74 with support from VRS and the Department of Education as applicable, looking first at total compensation for Valors members. And then there will be 2 reports regarding the impact of moving to the hybrid retirement system on recruitment and retention for state government employees and also teachers. These reports are expected in the fall, and Mr. Chairman, I just want to mention with that we will be reporting on employee contribution rates to the hybrid plan's DC component in December, so hopefully that will dovetail nicely with some of these reports.
Can you remind us, weren't we concerned about the contribution rates being low in previous years, or am I misremembering?
Mr. Chair, I will yield for that historical knowledge to Kimberly.
Do you think that have any indication if that might have changed over this last year?
I appreciate your question, Mr. Chairman. Alex and I are looking into that right now. In December, we're going to provide you a fairly comprehensive status report on how we are doing as a state in terms of employees contributing to the hybrid plan and what that means to them and
if I can. Is there anything being done by VRS to market this, to encourage them, to tell people, hey, you want to have a comfortable retirement, please sacrifice a little bit more now?
Right, that's a good question. VRS, we have talked with VRS in the past over this, and they have done, they have tried to get information out there. They've tried to, have splash screens so when members log into their account, they see. I think there's a couple, when we're talking to these other plans, we're also asking what they do to see if there's any good ideas, and there may be a point at which there's only so much marketing that can really move the needle. It may be that if you really want to move the needle, it's really maybe a tweak to the plan design that would really make a difference.
Sure. Okay. Yes, Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On slide 17, I'm curious, the judges' service years being moved to Plan B rather than the hybrid plan. Why?
So the main concern there, and I'm sure VRS may talk more about this, but the main concern there, I think, was that they were having trouble getting judges to serve. And so Plan 2 is a richer benefit, and so that was the impetus behind getting them to, that was the impetus between making the plan change. So moving it back from the hybrid plan to
Delegate Wilt,
Plan
do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well,
Go ahead.
not on that point, but the other point in slide 17. If there's further comment on that one, I'll yield. But I do have another question.
Okay. Well, let's let Senator McDougal ask his question, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as judges, I think the concern that many of us had when we first made the change was that judges are appointed for a finite period of time, either 6, 8, or 12 years. And we found as time went on that most individuals in the height or toward the end of their career, if they're in their late 50s or early 60s, would not be willing to become judges because they could never vest in retirement. So the way the system was set up, it was a disincentive for the exact people that we were trying to get to be judges. So by moving the system in this direction, it thus encourages people who have had a successful legal career in private or government sector to move over and be judges instead of somebody at the beginning of their career, because actually you had to be in for 30 or 40 years to get vested, and we wanted people that had 30 or 40 years of legal experience not get that experience while they were on the bench.
All right, very good. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the second bullet on page 17, help me understand that whole sentence there. Wow, it's amazing that there's unclaimed funds in those particular areas, but then they were moved into the unclaimed property program. So yeah, just walk me through, just get real elaborate, but help me understand how all that worked.
Absolutely. Thank you, Delegate Wilt. So that sentence, and I will just yield to say VOLSAP. So VOLSAP allows members to contribute in while they are part of the rescue squads that are contributing to that. But there are cases where a member may leave that rescue squad or that rescue squad may close. And so if those funds that they have contributed sort of fall out of memory for some of those members, this makes it easier for them to find it by moving it into that searchable unclaimed treasury database for a property so that they can get access to those funds later.
Okay. Alex, I guess we're done. I don't see anybody's hand up. That was great presentation, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will now turn it over to Scott Andrews, the chair for the VRS Board of Trustees, to start the VRS portion of your presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Sickles.
But it's a lot of responsibility that you have.
Well, it's to be honest, it's a real gift and blessing for me to be in this position.
Well, good.
And as I stated last year, as I think about some of the organizations that I've been involved with, VRS, and both from an investment side and from the administrative side, is a model for this country. And it's been a real gift for me. So
terrific.
Thank you. And we will touch on, I think the point that you brought up, and I appreciate the dialogue related to our beneficiaries, our education of our beneficiaries, and making sure that we're giving them all of the resources possible through customer service, through interactions with our call center, and through different consulting. Sandy Jack will comment a little bit on that, but it is something, matter of fact, in our last board meeting in June, we actually addressed some of those issues and how do we measure them. So thank you for bringing that up. So I'm Scott Andrews, Chair of the Virginia Retirement System Board of Trustees. Grateful for the opportunity to meet with you today and to provide our annual update. I'll start things off, followed by Andrew Junkin, our Chief Investment Officer, and Sandy Jack, Director of Policy, Planning, and Compliance, will deliver an update on behalf of the VRS Director. Since our last report to the Commission, we've had 2 changes to our 9-member board. J. Clifford Foster IV, Manager at Raymond James and Associates, was appointed by Governor Youngkin to the board in March. Also, current trustee Lawrence Bernert III of Clearstead Advisory Solutions was elected by the board to serve as vice chair. As members of the board and staff, our daily objective is to deliver on the VRS mission and vision. We share a commitment across the agency to help the Commonwealth's public servants build a bright and sound future in retirement. On that note, I'm pleased to report that the health of the VRS Trust Fund is strong across several metrics. As a long-term investor, we are well positioned to respond to shifting market conditions while maintaining sufficient cash to pay more than $6 billion in benefits annually to our retirees. We build our diversified portfolio to weather short-term economic challenges and market volatility while continuing to meet current and future obligations. The VRS approach to investing is strategic and it is efficient. Our strategy is to seek out investments that will bring favorable returns while carefully managing risk across the entire portfolio. Over time, that strategy has generated long-term returns that meet or exceed our assumed rate of 6.75% and has raised the market value of the fund to more than $120 billion. Our approach is also efficient. About 1/3 of our investments are managed in-house, saving an estimated $58 million annually in fees. As a large investor, we're also positioned to benefit from discounts on the fees charged by external portfolio managers. These savings are significant because each extra dollar in the plan is a dollar that need not come from contributions to the plan. Each year, CEM Benchmarking, a leading data and insights firm, measures our investment and administrative operations compared to pension systems of comparable size and provides actionable insights. Their latest report places VRS investment management in the favorable quadrant, signifying superior performance at less cost than our peers. Andrew will provide an update on investment performance in the markets. Since fiscal year 2025 just closed, annual performance figures are not yet final, and we will share those fiscal year-end performance numbers as soon as they're finalized. On the administrative side, the most recent report from CEM Benchmarking demonstrates VRS is on par with peers in delivering customer service, but at a significantly lower cost. VRS members count on us to deliver their benefits reliably and efficiently. The administrative team led by Director Trish Bishop is consistently innovating to deliver on those promises. Since I began my term as chair in 2022, I have witnessed VRS staff collaborating across departments to make sure our members and beneficiaries have an ongoing positive customer experience. The team has been particularly focused on voluntary contributions made by hybrid retirement plan members, Since the hybrid plan was initiated in 2014, VRS has worked closely with its defined contribution plan record keepers to provide education and outreach to members and VRS participating employers, resulting in better savings rates among participants. We recently onboarded industry leader Voya Financial as the plan record keeper, and we look forward to our partnership with them. I'd like to thank this commission and the General Assembly for your unwavering support of our work on behalf of Virginia's public servants. We are gratified by the one-time cash infusions in recent years that have further strengthened the plans by reducing liabilities. Your partnership and your steadfast commitment to funding contribution rates helps ensure that we will continue to make benefit payments to retirees and provide future benefits to those just beginning their careers in our schools and communities across the Commonwealth. Thank you for the critical and unwavering support. Next, you'll hear from Chief Investment Officer Andrew Junkin.
Does anybody have a question for the chairman here? Do you have an update on how many of our retirees stay in Virginia? Last time I heard it was like 84% or something.
Chairman Sickles, in the last 12 months, I think that's approximately right. We do break it down by state, and I think directionally it's within that number, but we can clearly get that specifically. I don't think it's been a dramatic change.
I think it's an important point to make for the public that people are staying here. I'm not sure the federal government has such a good results.
I doubt they do, but I think it is very important when you start to think about the ultimate economic activity that's generated by the retirees and beneficiaries by staying here.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead with your introduction, please.
All right. Andrew, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Junkin.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Junkin. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for the Virginia Retirement System, and I will give a brief update today, talk about our long-term investment strategy, talk about recent performance and markets and economy. So starting on page 15 here, we are in the process of implementing a new board-approved asset allocation. We've been implementing this for the last 18 months or so. We feel it's a good trade-off between risk and return, and you can see the expected return there exceeds our long-term target return of 6.75%, and the new long-term allocation has less volatility associated with it than the prior allocation. So one of the things that we're very focused on, and in fact it's required by the Code of Virginia, is to mitigate the risk of large drawdowns in the portfolio. So that's what we're really focused on here, is balancing risk and return. The next page, this is the fiscal year history of our returns versus our expected return, which is the light green line there, which you can see has actually come down a little bit over time. It's currently 6.75%, as I mentioned. While we do design the portfolio to earn more than 6.75% over the long term, on any particular fiscal year, it may be above or below. We're focused really on generating long-term returns, 10 years plus. And so to highlight that, we've got total fund performance here going back 25 years versus the board-approved benchmark, and you can see this is as of March 31st. All but the one-year return has exceeded the board-approved benchmark, and we've had good success against the 6.75% current actuarial target return. There's a lot of information about performance here. I'm going to skip this and touch on performance a little bit more later on in the presentation, but I wanted to highlight on page 20 that we do run a very diversified portfolio. So back to the point about trying to mitigate large drawdowns in the portfolio, you can see that no component of the portfolio exceeds a third of our total portfolio, the largest component being public equities. As Chairman Andrews mentioned, we do keep plenty of cash for liquidity purposes and for benefit payments. That's we're making sure that we can survive through whatever the market throws at us in the short term. And that's been very helpful as we've experienced some choppy markets over the last couple of months. This is a different universe chart. This is focused on risk and return instead of risk and cost, which Chairman Andrews showed. This is the last 5 years. So the colors represent different quadrants of risk and return. The intersection of all of the colors is sort of the median public plan. So what you see is the VRS total fund is above and to the left of the median total plan, and it's above and to the left of our total fund benchmark. What does that mean? It means we've generated higher returns than the median public plan, and we've done it with less volatility. We've also outperformed on a 5-year basis the total fund benchmark, and we've done it with less volatility. So thinking about risk-adjusted returns, we're very pleased with this outcome. The next page is the same graph, but now this is 10 years, again, focused on the long term, and again, the results are the same. We've outperformed with less volatility the median public plan, and we've outperformed with less volatility the total fund benchmark. As Chairman Andrews mentioned, we manage a significant portion of the portfolio internally, which saves on the fees that we do pay to external managers. You can see it's more than $39 billion here that we manage internally across a variety of different asset classes. When we look at the ways that we have added value to the fund, there are a number of different components to that. Sort of looking at that which I just referenced, in-house management, that's the lower right on this chart. You can see that has saved $122 million over the last 10 years. The legend on this chart is somehow not legible. Effective cost management is where we're able to negotiate lower fees due to the scale that we have, and that has saved, on average, $18 million. And then the top part of this chart really is the returns that we've been able to generate over the last 10 years versus our benchmark. If you translate that into dollars, it's an extra $9.3 billion. So that's sort of the status of the portfolio, the investment strategy, and the recent results. Looking at the current markets and economy, there's a lot going on in the world. I don't need to tell you all this. Tariffs, even over the weekend, are still changing, probably changing while I'm speaking. So there's uncertainty associated with that. The market at the moment seems to be sort of shrugging all of that off after the initial reaction. I put this slide together when we didn't have a federal budget, but we now do have a federal budget, so we can cross one thing off the list. Geopolitics hasn't really gone anywhere. There's been a lot of political tension across the globe, including a couple of hot wars. But in spite of all of this, really the portfolio has remained resilient and is at an all-time high. As Alex mentioned, we identified investing in certain countries as an investment risk, these foreign adversaries. And so we've taken steps to mitigate the exposure to these foreign adversaries, both in our portfolio and our benchmark, as Alex mentioned. Much of this mitigation has already happened. It's happened over the last couple of weeks. So that reduction in exposure to those 6 countries, primarily China and Hong Kong, has already happened. We have a very dedicated staff that's very highly credentialed with lots of experience. We're really a great team that's very focused on driving returns for the benefit of the beneficiaries of the plan. And then just in conclusion on the investment section, I'd like to reemphasize that we are long-term investors, that we are really focused on risk management while still meeting our return goal, and that performance continues to be good thanks to strong markets and the team's ability to add value beyond those returns, and that we are a very cost-effective and cost-focused investment team as well. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, who has a question here? Anybody? Why is the S&P 500 index so risky? It's the top of the risk block. I thought people, if you invested in a stock fund, there'd be, that would reflect the market as a whole, your returns.
This would be back on one of the prior charts, I think.
Yeah, a couple times you had it over there, and the risk reward, it was way up in the high risk territory.
Yeah, well, it really, by being 100% U.S. focused, it doesn't benefit from sort of geographic diversification in terms, I'm just speaking of volatility.
Oh,
right?
I
The
see.
U.S. markets have obviously been a great place to invest. It's also dominated at this point by 7 stocks, and I think those top 7 stocks represent about 35% of the S&P 500. So, as goes one of those 7 stocks, and we could probably all rattle them off quietly in our heads, the risk that we show here also measures upside volatility. So volatility in this case, so if they go way up or if they go way down, it sort of gets captured in that volatility measure both ways.
So how do you make sure that investments that you're buying don't have Chinese assets in them?
So that's a great question, and there are, with as diversified as our portfolio is, obviously we have had and continue to have, we've not eliminated exposure to China because it's frankly impossible. We have mitigated. In public markets, publicly traded stocks and bonds, it's quite easy to tell where a company is domiciled, and in those cases, we have been able to largely eliminate that exposure. In some of our private portfolios, like private equity, holdings that have existed for a number of years, they'll just have to sort of roll out of the portfolio. But as we move forward, we're having conversations with external managers to make sure that they understand that we have this policy in place and that they are able to abide by it.
Okay. Any questions from members? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Sandy Jack. I'm the Director of Policy, Planning, and Compliance for the Virginia Retirement System. I am pinch hitting today for our Director, Trish Bishop, who regrets that she is unable to be here with you in person to deliver this briefing, but I am happy to be here with you to share our administration overview. Providing Virginia's public servants with a secure retirement is the mission that brought VRS into being in 1942, and that continues to be our focus today. We currently serve active members across 3 primary plans, which are all set out in the Virginia Code. Plan 1 and Plan 2 are defined benefit plans, and the hybrid retirement plan, which was implemented in 2014, combines a traditional pension plan along with a defined contribution plan, which is a 401k style plan that most people are familiar with. Over the past decade, the hybrid plan has actually become our largest plan with over 200,000 active members. It has reduced pressure on employer costs, and it has enhanced the health of the trust fund overall. As some of the questions touched on earlier, however, the hybrid plan does shift more responsibility for adequate retirement funding to the member. By design, the hybrid plan requires members to voluntarily contribute more to their retirement plan than their colleagues who are in Plan 1 or Plan 2 to generate similar levels of income replacement in retirement. Now, VRS actively encourages those voluntary contributions among hybrid plan members, and currently 61% are making voluntary contributions. To follow up on some of the questions that were mentioned earlier, it's crucial that VRS works with our employers because they are the front line who speak with employees as they're onboarding. So we offer a suite of tools to employers, including webinars and promotional material for them to help members understand the benefit of voluntarily contributing early. We also offer resources in the ways that we have direct communication with members, for instance, through their MyVRS account, for them to be able to use calculators and understand that the earlier they contribute voluntarily, the bigger benefits that will have for their ultimate benefit in retirement. About 1/4 of hybrid plan membership is making the full 4% contribution, which is the maximum for voluntary. Every 3 years, by plan design, the planned auto escalation feature bumps up all voluntary members by 0.5%. The next escalation is actually right around the corner. It will be January 1st of 2026. Now, that escalation is automatic, not mandatory. That means that members can opt out of the auto escalation if they so choose. But the good news is, at our last auto escalation in 2023, we saw less than 1% of members opting out, which means that they are choosing to save more for their retirements voluntarily. When asked about opportunities to enhance the hybrid plan in the past, VRS has shared several ideas, each of which would require legislative action. First, automatically enrolling new hybrid plan members in the voluntary portion of the plan at a higher rate. Currently, the default is 0% if the member does not choose to actively contribute more. That amount could be changed, for instance, to start at 0.5% and maintain that ability for the member to opt out if they so choose. Second, increasing auto-escalation frequency. Right now, we auto-escalate every 3 years. That could be changed to every 2 years or perhaps even annually. And third, adjusting the required member contribution to the defined portion of the plan, which is currently at 4%, so that a higher portion of the member's contribution goes to their defined contribution plan. So for example, right now we have 4% of the members, 5% going to defined benefit and 1% going to defined contribution. That could be changed so that 3% goes to defined benefit and 2% goes to the member's defined contribution account. And VRS stands ready to assist the Commission later this year as it takes a closer look at the hybrid plan. As switching gears, as Chairman Andrews mentioned, the overall strength of the retirement system is good, and one indicator of plan health is funded status. VRS is on a long-term trajectory towards fully funding across all of our plans by 2043, given reasonable assumptions. In the case of our two largest plans, which are those for teachers and for state employees, the funded status is above 82% on a market value basis. And that estimate assumes investment returns of 6.75% and inflation of 2.5%. Also, as the chair noted, we've made considerable progress reducing unfunded liabilities through things such as cash infusions, which have been approved by the General Assembly and the governor, through fully funding actuarially determined contribution rates, and through favorable investment experience. That's important because 2/3 of employer contributions go towards payment of the unfunded liabilities right now. So once we pay off those legacy liabilities, employer contribution rates, all other assumptions being met, should be significantly lower. It is critical that we remain focused on that goal, and we are grateful for your ongoing support. Next, VRS just received the results of its latest actuarial experience study. Conducted every 4 years, the study assesses whether the assumptions underpinning the plan were actually borne out in the plan's experience. The study reviews actuarial assumptions around economic factors such as investment returns, inflation, and wage growth, as well as demographic factors like mortality rates, retirement and termination rates, and pay increases. We are pleased to report that no significant changes were recommended to economic assumptions or to the plan's assumed rate of return, which will stand at 6.75%. There are some minor adjustments to demographic assumptions that were recommended to incorporate recent plan experience. VRS and its plan actuary are currently working on the 2025 rate-setting actuarial evaluations that will determine employer contribution rates for the next 2-year budget cycle. And those rates will be presented to the board in the fall, and it will be reported to you at the same time. We anticipate those rates to be comparable to the current budget cycle. Additionally, this year, the agency completed a successful transition to Voya Financial as the third-party administrator for our defined contribution plans as of January 1 of this year. With this change, hybrid plan members can now make changes to their voluntary contributions monthly instead of the previous quarterly basis. And to respond to Delegate Wilt's question earlier, that change was at no cost to VRS because it was implemented at the same time we were transitioning to Voya, so it was just made a part of the new plan. Another noteworthy benefit for VRS members is the opportunity to receive professional investment advice from Voya's retirement advisors. In addition, online financial planning assistance is now available to our members as well. So we are excited about the numerous online calculators, savings tool, the mobile app that Alex mentioned in her presentation, and educational resources that Voya offers our members to support their retirement planning. And finally, delivering superior customer service is at the core of our agency mission, and VRS has taken other steps in the past year to further enhance those services. First, a new counseling center is now open in Henrico County, which offers ample free available parking, perhaps unlike the downtown area, and easy access to I-64 and public transportation. We have also replaced our call management system to now offer more efficient call routing, and we hired a customer experience manager to help us examine customer behaviors and VRS systems as we explore additional opportunities to improve and innovate. Today, VRS members have more options than ever to get the help they need when they need it. So in closing, I will say with your continued support, VRS is making progress toward achieving full funding across all plans. We are encouraged by the results from paying down our legacy liabilities, which further strengthens our plan health. And we are excited to continue to move forward on our customer experience journey with a focus on improved outcomes for our members, our retirees, and our employers. So thank you, Chairman Sickles and members of the Commission, for the opportunity to provide this update. I will pre-answer one previous question. I've confirmed with the subject matter experts that came with us that 84% of retirees still remain in Virginia, which is very important to see the benefits we pay going back into the Virginia economy. So the VRS team is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, that's terrific. Can you tell us how fully funded we are as compared to other state systems? Where are we? We're pretty high, are we not?
Yes, sir. I have a slide on that, and if I could get the slides back up in the appendix, I might be able to show you the graph we've prepared on how we compare to other states. Thank you. Just close your eyes so you don't get vertigo for a second here. Switch through. All right, there we go. This chart uses data from fiscal year 23, but that's the most available right now. And if you look at the chart, VRS is that yellow line there. So this shows that VRS is in the upper quartile compared to other states. But what's interesting about this chart is if you look at the green kind of squiggly line there, that is each state's discount rate. So if you look at that, VRS uses a lower discount rate than most plans. And in fact, only 3 plans have a higher funded status using the discount rate at or below what VRS uses. So if you were to normalize that rate across the states, we would likely move up even higher in the rankings in terms of funded status.
Okay. Well, very good. Do members have questions? If not, I have another question. So who decides the auto escalation or when you escalate the employee contribution? Who's going to decide that?
That's determined in the plan design, which is in statute.
So, in other words, if we want to increase that, we need to pass a bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you encouraging us to do that?
We are happy administrators, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
We will follow whatever the law says.
Yeah, but we only make $17,000 a year, so you do not want our advice, I don't think. We need your advice more than you need our advice.
We will say, Mr. Chairman, that is one of the ways that would likely help hybrid plan retirement members move closer to their Plan 1 and Plan 2 colleagues in terms of the investment income, the income replacement they receive in retirement.
What's the argument against doing that, against escalating the employee contribution? What's the argument against that? Freedom? You know?
Yes, sir, although that can be addressed by maintaining the opt-out.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Do you have somebody to introduce? You do you not? Kimberly, you were going to introduce our guest from GRS Consulting.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and just to follow up on what you were saying, in addition to, and we will be providing more information on in December on this, but the other thing is there's a state match, so in terms of voluntary contributions, so there is a state cost to a lot of these. That would be the other potential, I guess, ramification. So anyway, thank you, Sandy. Mr. Chairman, next we will turn to the final portion of today's meeting, which is dedicated to JLEC's oversight of the Commonwealth Savers Plan, which is formerly Virginia 529. First, you will receive the findings of an actuarial audit of Commonwealth Savers defined benefit college savings plans, and this is what most people think of as their prepaid tuition plans. JLARC is required to conduct an actuarial audit of the plans every 4 years with the assistance of an actuarial consultant, and our consultant this year is Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company, or GRS. Following GRS's presentation, the Commonwealth Savers CEO and Investment Director will provide you with their annual update. So before turning the meeting over to GRS, I do want to mention some highlights that you will hear from GRS today and why they are particularly timely. You will hear that the program is actuarially sound, which is a good thing, and that the funded ratio and surplus of the program have continued to grow. The funded status is now nearly 193%, and the actuarial surplus is $1.2 billion. And if nothing is done with this surplus, it will continue to grow because it is so large relative to the program obligations, and this is assuming the actuarial assumptions are met. So to clarify, this is the same surplus for which legislation has been introduced but not passed in recent sessions. So I do want to take this opportunity to remind you, Mr. Chairman, and the members that language was included in the Appropriation Act this year to create a joint subcommittee made up of members from both House Appropriations and Senate Finance to review the 2022 report that JLARC conducted on the study and also to determine how to use these surplus funds. And according to the language in the Act, the subcommittee is supposed to report its findings out later this year. So unless there are any questions about that, Mr. Chairman, I would now like to introduce Amy Williams and Josh Murner from GRS, who will give you the results of their actuarial audit virtually.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I believe that someone will be sharing the slides for us. Thank you. I'm Amy Williams from GRS, and I'll be doing the presentation of the audit results. Next slide, please. The GRS actuarial audit did validate the results of the June 30th actuarial evaluation of the Commonwealth Savers Defined Benefit 529 program. The Defined Benefit 529 program is actuarially sound. The projected program resources are expected to be more than sufficient to fully meet the program obligations based on the contracts in force as of the valuation date of June 30th, 2024. As Kimberly mentioned, the program has a funded ratio, which is the ratio of the assets to the liabilities, of 192.8% and a fund surplus of $1.2 billion based on the June 30th, 2024 actuarial valuation. The program is projected to have a surplus of about $5.8 billion at the end of fiscal year 2053 after all tuition obligations have been paid based on the contracts that were in force as of the valuation date of June 30th, 2024. And we found that the actuarial assumptions used in the actuarial valuation are reasonable. If you would advance 2 slides, please. Next slide. Just some brief background. GRS was retained to conduct the 2025 quadrennial actuarial audit of the Commonwealth Savers Defined Benefit 529 program. This program includes both the legacy prepaid 529 plan and the tuition track portfolio. The purpose of the audit is to provide the General Assembly with a comprehensive overview of the actuarial soundness of the program, and the audit was completed with the full cooperation of Commonwealth Savers staff and their retained actuary, Milliman. Next slide, please. GRS performed what we call a replication actuarial audit of the June 30th, 2024 actuarial valuation. What a replication audit means is that GRS independently calculated all the results of the June 30th, 2024 valuation using the same contract data and assumptions as used by Milliman. Next slide, please. As part of the audit, we reviewed the reasonableness reasonableness of the funding results and conclusions in the actuarial evaluation. We looked at the assumptions, methods, and underlying data used to produce the results. We reviewed the content that was included in the actuarial evaluation report and whether the actuarial evaluation was performed in accordance with the actuarial standards of practice. Next slide, please. As we already said, we found that the funding results and conclusions of the evaluation are reasonable. The program has assets of about $2.5 billion and obligations of about $1.3 billion as of the valuation date. The program has an actuarial reserve or surplus of about $1.2 billion and the funded ratio of about 192.8%. The program resources are expected to be more than sufficient to cover all program obligations, and if all actuarial assumptions are realized, the program will have a expected surplus of about $5.8 billion after all obligations associated with the contracts in force as of June 30th, 2024 are paid. Next slide, please. On this slide right here, we have a comparison of the actuarial valuation results from the June 30th, 2020 valuation and the June 30th, 2024 valuation. So as you can see, the actuarial reserve or surplus increased from about $1.1 billion in 2020 to about $1.2 billion in 2024. The funded ratio increased from 157.4% to 192.8%, and the estimated probability of meeting program obligations is over 99%, both as of June 30th, 2020 and June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. As part of the replication audit, GRS was able to replicate the June 30, 2024 valuation results with a high degree of accuracy. We independently calculated the total present value of benefits or the obligations within $10.2 million out of $1.3 billion or 0.8%, which is very close match. We replicated the present value of future installment payments, which is a component of the total asset value within 0.6 million or 1.1%. We found that the contract beneficiary data used in the valuation was reasonable and appropriate, and that the assumptions used were reasonable. The main actuarial assumptions are the investment return assumption of 5.75%, the tuition increase assumption, 4% for universities contracts, 3% for community college contracts for the 2025-2026 academic year, and a tuition increase assumption of 6% in each subsequent year for both contract types. We do believe that these assumptions are reasonable. However, we do believe that they are somewhat on the conservative end of a range of assumptions. Next slide, please. We did have some very minor recommendations, which we believe will help improve the valuation process. With respect to the actuarial valuation report, we just had some recommendations regarding adding some additional disclosures, display of different information on contract data, sensitivity of program risks, summarizing the payment of administrative expenses and the source of those funds, and then just adding some language in accordance with the actuarial standards of practice. Based on our review of the contract data, we just recommend that Commonwealth Savers continue their data cleanup on the contract data, which they've already been doing, and we recommend an experience study within the next 5 years. As a comprehensive review of all the assumptions, and then Commonwealth Savers annually reviews the investment return and tuition increase assumptions. So just recommend that they continue that practice that they've been implementing. So that concludes the summary of the actuarial audit results, and happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any hands up. Yes, Senator McDougal.
The rate of return, guess what was the number on that 575, and I think we're looking at VRS is significantly more there. What is the range? You said that that was within the range, but on the low end of the range, what's the range that you usually see?
The investment return assumption would be based on the asset allocation for each system or program. So to the extent that the 529 program has a different asset allocation than VRS, it would be appropriate to have a different investment return assumption. Based on GRS's independent review, we found that there was about a 60% probability of meeting or achieving the 5.75% assumption. So, while we believe there is a little bit maybe of conservatism in that assumption, given the nature of a 529 program, we believe that it's reasonable. However, a slightly higher investment return assumption, would also, we believe, be reasonable as well.
Chairman McDougall, did you understand
Mr. Chairman, I guess, do you have any information on what other states with similar programs, what their investment return assumptions are?
The investment return assumptions, I think, for prepaid tuition, programs like this are typically lower than what we see for comparable retirement systems. So I think, on the order of a 6% investment return assumption or lower is, I think, typically what we would see. And Josh, I don't know if you have anything you'd want to add on that.
Nothing particular to add.
Can you please introduce yourself? You please introduce yourself.
Hi there. My name is Josh Merner. I'm an analyst with Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company.
Welcome.
So yeah, nothing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So nothing particular to add. When it comes to comparing to other plans, we see a lot of volatility. Certain other plans are also closed plans, not accepting new contracts, whereas Commonwealth Savers has an open plan, the tuition track portfolio plan. So we see some plans that have lower investment return assumptions, but they also aren't actively receiving contributions from future contract holders. So all of that being said, I think 575 is very reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, Senator McDougall, follow up. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And we have Mary Morris coming next. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Commonwealth Savers. Welcome back, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you, always. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to share updates for Commonwealth Savers, as you've already heard, formerly known as Virginia 529, and to make a very few comments on the GRS report that you just received. Not seeing our presentation come up. There we go. As you know, our agency name changed last year to Commonwealth Savers Plan, and our formal rebrand and transition was completed earlier this year. This was done to better reflect the variety of programs and educational access initiatives we provide, as the General Assembly has expanded our mandate in recent years beyond education savings. The rebranding has gone well with our customers, and our team has taken this as an opportunity to reintroduce the public to our programs and our commitment to overall financial health, wellness, and education. I'm going to share a very brief video that quickly captures the essence of the rebrand and what we do at Commonwealth Savers as we focus on achievement, fulfillment, and possibilities for the future. The video also provides a small window into the kinds of materials we produce and share online, in webinars, and at speaking opportunities across the Commonwealth.
In the future for yourself and your loved ones, you see a life filled with achievement, fulfillment, and endless possibilities. Every dollar saved brings your dreams closer to reality. Whether you're just starting out or ready to expand your savings, Commonwealth Savers is here to empower your future with programs designed to grow your savings alongside your ambitions. Invest 529, opening doors to education, whether it's college or trade school. Able Now, providing a brighter tomorrow for you and your loved ones with disabilities. Retire Path, transforming today's earnings into tomorrow's adventures, ensuring your next chapter is the most exciting one yet. And Soar Virginia, empowering young Virginians through scholarships, mentorship, and financial guidance to help them soar toward their higher education dreams. With Commonwealth Savers, your future is within reach. Every dream deserves the chance to shine, and every saver deserves the tools to succeed. Anyone can be a Commonwealth Saver.
Thank you for watching that. We try to be very aspirational. Next, you see a snapshot of the programs you just heard about. Shows that we remain the largest 529 plan in the country, with about 900,000 accounts housed in Virginia, representing about 550,000 unique Virginia account owners. We also are the largest independent ABLE program in the country. Our recently opened Retire Path Virginia program has enabled more than 16,000 working Virginians who 2 years ago were not saving for retirement to start that journey. And our SOAR Virginia program is serving more than 35,000 Virginia high school students every year and thousands of individuals in post-secondary education as well. Through program distributions, our educational programs distributed $9 billion in the last fiscal year for an estimated 750,000 students. Specifically in Virginia, our programs distributed an estimated $600 million directly to Virginia public and private universities for tuition, fees, and other expenses for approximately 40,000 students. Late-breaking news from late last week, and I'm going to put it in here because we didn't have a slide for it, is that the recently enacted federal tax bill includes several provisions, most of them are operative immediately, related to 529 plans, which makes them even more attractive and flexible investment vehicles, which we think will drive more growth. Provisions allowing the use of 529 accounts for a variety of credential and certificate programs, as well as continuing education, is something our team worked with members of Congress for the last 6 years. In addition, the qualified K-12 expenses were significantly enhanced, which will allow even more people to use their 529 accounts for sometimes unexpected costs associated with K-12 education. We have a link to our press release about the changes on our homepage at invest529.com. With respect to the GRS report you received just a little bit ago, it's the fourth quadrennial audit they've performed in the years we've had JLARC oversight. I have very few remarks because this was a clean audit with no findings and only minor recommendations, and those were GRS's words in their report. Primarily, we're just pleased with the report and its recognition of the way in which the defined benefit programs have been administered for 30 years, with all key assumptions and results found to be reasonable and appropriate and with clean and replicable data. The key takeaway with respect to those minor recommendations is that most of them encourage us to continue doing what we've been doing for 30 years since we opened the Legacy Prepaid program, and we have every intention of doing so. You may have noted some references in that last slide and in the GRS report to the tuition track portfolio, which we call TTP. That's the successor defined benefit option to the Legacy Prepaid program, which closed to new accounts in 2019 with the approval of the General Assembly. TTP opened in early 2021 as a portfolio option within our direct 529 savings program, Invest 529. It's one of the fastest growing portfolios in Invest 529, with over 1 million units purchased in the 4 years it's been open. That represents 10,000 years of post-secondary education. We have more than 12,000 TTP accounts, and if you add those to the remaining legacy prepaid 529 accounts, that represents about 50,000 defined benefit program account owners, virtually all of whom are Virginians with Virginia beneficiaries, and more than $150 million in TTP assets under management within the trust fund. We are putting the finishing touches on a report developed to address recommendations in the 2018 JLARC report, which supported the closing of the Legacy Prepaid program. That recommendation was to review the program after several years of operation. We'll share this report with the Commission in August when we share it with the Commonwealth Savers Board. And on this slide, you can simply see the steady growth of the TTP program, a promotion to highlight the price change, which comes tomorrow. We do a reset always in July with the change in tuition at Virginia's public universities, and to encourage recurring contributions, which is an important way to grow accounts. Provided a strong fourth quarter in fiscal 25, and that is persisting into the first quarter of FY 26. You've seen this chart on slide 8 before, and it's included just to show the historical summary of the actuarial funded status of the defined benefit programs since their inception. Fluctuations reflect, in large part, investment performance results and tuition inflation rates. With a prolonged bull market and moderating tuition inflation and liabilities in recent years, the funded status has increased significantly, as you've heard, particularly since our single highest investment performance year in FY 2021. Because of the changes in the defined benefit program and in its actuarial funded status, the Commonwealth Savers Board has for the last 5 years devoted considerable time and attention to assessing the opportunities afforded by this most fortunate situation and considering how best to prudently fulfill its fiduciary duty to the trust fund and our customers, and also to maximize the benefit to the Commonwealth and advance Commonwealth Savers' mission to enhance education access and affordability for all Virginians. Slide 9 summarizes the 3 channels of work by the board and our advisory committees to ensure the protection of customers and the Commonwealth while appropriately addressing these opportunities. All are critical to success, but we started with the primary duty of a fiduciary, risk and risk management. The board, through its Audit and Actuarial Committee, developed a new and more robust risk model, which has been reviewed by 2 independent consultants and praised for its thoughtfulness and approach to risk management. And we believe the risk thresholds established and the risk scorecard, which is used by the board to measure results, are a significant enhancement to our overall management. While the Audit and Actuarial Committee tackled risk, on the investment side, the board, assisted by its Investment Advisory Committee, or IAC, created an access fund as a sub-fund of the special non-reverting trust fund, which is managed by Commonwealth Savers, to establish its commitment to working with the General Assembly to create new education access opportunities in Virginia. This also allowed the IAC to consider and develop a statement of investment policy and guidelines for the new access fund. And they established a spend policy, similar to other endowments, to provide a steady source of funds for potential education access programs. These policies are ready to be deployed at the appropriate time after General Assembly action. And finally, the board, with the assistance of its Access Advisory Committee and our many access partners, including SHEV and the community college system, developed a plan to use the cash flow from an access fund to provide transformational change in education access in Virginia, the stated goal of the Commonwealth Savers Board in an October 2022 resolution. We look forward to continuing to work with the General Assembly on this matter and to discussing these plans and opportunities later this year with the legislative work group established to consider the Defined Benefit 529 Fund that Ms. Sartay mentioned earlier. Moving on to our other programs, first up are our disability savings programs, Able Now and Able America. As I mentioned earlier, these programs have seen steady growth in the 10 years since we first opened, and some recent news regarding Able accounts and changes in our Able Now program make us excited for the future potential for growth. First, we'll be transitioning to a new partner in program administration for Able Now, and this will provide an opportunity for enhancements to the program's operations as well as the customer experience. In addition, January 1 of 2026, the provisions of the Able Age Adjustment Act, enacted almost 3 years ago, go into effect. This increases the age of disability onset from 26 to 46 and will about double the number of people with disabilities allowed to have an Able account. This is a federal change that we worked hard on for years, and we are thrilled for January 1st to come. In addition, the recently enacted tax bill also includes making permanent some temporary advantages for Able accounts into permanency. That includes the ability to transfer funds from a 529 account to an ABLE account, and for ABLE accounts to take advantage of the federal savers credit.
Ms. Marshall, can you tell us a little bit more about what these ABLE accounts are intended to do for the audience out there that is watching? You know, what are we trying to do, and why did it needs more funding or more investment into it? How is it going to be able to help more Virginians?
Well, these accounts are used by individuals with disabilities. They are similar in many respects to a 529 account. They have some very significant restrictions as well. And the slide that you're looking at, you can see the growth in them. The way they were set up by federal statute limits the ability to increase them. And one of those provisions was that the age of disability onset until January 1 of 2026 is from birth to age 26. So anybody, and what we found, and again, what we argued with Congress for several years, was that you find a lot of young adults, particularly in that 26 to 46 age bracket, for whom neurological diseases become present. Members of the military and first responders have accidents, injuries, PTSD. Mental health issues tend to manifest in late teens into early adulthood. So by expanding the ability to open up an ABLE account for those individuals, we're expanding the potential to help more people. And these accounts do a couple of things. They are tax advantage savings, so the accounts grow tax-free, and the proceeds aren't taxed as long as they're used for qualified disability expenses, and that's a pretty broad range.
So that change has happened now?
That will occur. They enacted it 3 years ago with a delayed effective date. So January 1, 2026, that age will bump up.
And who decides whether you qualify or not as a disabled person?
So it's self-certification to a certain extent. You automatically qualify if you have qualified for Social Security. There's a large listing of types of disabilities that qualify, and you also can self-certify if you have a physician's diagnosis. And we provide information on our website to help individuals work with their doctors to get that certification of a qualifying disability. So there are a number of criteria. The severity of the disability makes you eligible for an account.
So you're going to have a marketing campaign the rest of this year so people will know that January 1
Absolutely.
This is available for 35-year-olds and 40-year-olds. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we're
Thank you
doing
very
a lot
much.
of outreach to different groups and through, yeah. We think it's a really great opportunity to let more people know about ABLE accounts in general. We still, struggle. It's getting through all the noise to let people know about it, but we think this is a really great opportunity to grow the program and to help more people.
Thank you for that further explanation.
Yeah. And again, this just shows you the growth in these programs. So we'll move on to retirement savings, another pretty exciting topic for us. In 2021, the General Assembly recognized the need to address the retirement savings gap because of some of the statistics on this slide. 25% of Americans have no retirement savings beyond Social Security. Only 36% believe that they are on track for retirement. And studies show us that people are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if they can do so at work. But before our legislation, almost 50% of working Virginians did not have access to retirement savings at work. So the General Assembly gave the mandate to Commonwealth Savers to develop a program to address the gap. And Retire Path Virginia opened 2 years ago in June 2023. Since that launch, we've seen early success, and our program growth has exceeded pre-opening projections. The bottom line is that, as I said earlier, more than 16,000 Virginians now have a path to building retirement security through their Retire Path accounts and the financial education that we provide along with that account. We think that's an important component. And those numbers grow daily. We are adding individuals daily, and the assets under management, the last time we had the number that's presented here is more than 15 million, but that grows daily as well. The success of the program, though, does expose an additional opportunity for the General Assembly to consider. Almost 1 million working Virginians still lack access to a workplace retirement option because of the employee thresholds included in our enabling legislation. The smaller employers who might benefit the most are excluded from the program and the efficiencies it creates without cost to the employer or added fiduciary responsibilities. Gig workers also may participate in the program, and we have a plan to do more outreach to those workers in FY26, as well as hopefully work with the General Assembly to consider the enabling statute to allow more employers to participate in the program. And many of them, as we've talked around the Commonwealth, have asked us to do that.
Ms. Marshall, I mean, I'm trying to remember this. This was Chairman Torian's bill.
Yes, that's correct.
And there was a pushback from the business community. He wanted it to go to smaller employers, and the business community resisted that. This was a mandate on them, even though they didn't have to match it, but they had to set up the mechanism in their payroll department to let people save on their own. And so you need to talk to our business community. If you want this to go down to smaller employers, I think the case needs to be made somewhere.
Yes, sir.
And Chairman Torian wanted to do that.
Yes, that was the original bill, and then during Senate floor hearings, that threshold was increased. And it also only applies to full-time employees, which creates some operational challenges. We have been doing that and talking to the community. The comment that I get most when I speak to organizations and we've spoken to Rotary clubs, we talk to chambers of commerce, we are out and about across the Commonwealth talking to employers. One thing I think helps is that the experience has been good. We've gotten no pushback from the employers that participate. I told them, you have to trust us that we're going to make this easy, that it will not be onerous. We understand that no one generally likes mandates, but the participation is pretty easy. The onboarding is without cost to the employers. And so we know we have to make that case, Mr. Chairman. And we'll have an opportunity perhaps this next year to do that. But we have a lot of requests because we're not allowed to allow a smaller employer to voluntarily participate for fear of violating ERISA rules. The statute has to actually provide for the participation, or we can't allow those smaller employers. Their employees could apply and can participate individually, and we do have some who do that, but that's just a hard conversation to have.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. And then finally, I touched on education access programs in the context of the defined benefit program, but I do want to note that Commonwealth Savers has been in the education access business since 1994 when we were created. Everything we do is about educational access for our customers and for everyone in the Commonwealth. Since 2010, we've been able to use some available net revenues to provide significant benefits to thousands of Virginia students through our SOAR Virginia program, particularly our SOAR Scholars program, which started in 2010. Annually, these programs now serve more than 35,000 students and thousands more in our community colleges and universities. Our access partners are on the front lines of improvements to educational access. We focus on scholarships, mentoring and coaching, and career and technical training. I note in particular our partnerships with Chev and the community college system. Their leaders are active supporters of our efforts as members of the Commonwealth Savers Board, and they work with us through their staff. We continue to work together with them to develop new ways to advance our aligned missions. And this slide is just a brief fact sheet about SOAR Scholars, our longest program, which has served more than 14,000 students in total, now serves about 4,000 students annually, providing mentoring and coaching and up to $2,000 in scholarship support and almost $20 million in scholarships awarded to date. And now it's my pleasure to turn this over, unless you have questions for me, or maybe you want to wait until the end, to Mike Swink, our investment director for Commonwealth Savers, to cover investment performance and some more detail on our 529 programs. I hope I've left him some time. I know we're running late. As he comes up, I'll note that the appendix to this presentation includes some information on key FY25 achievements, information on our IAC members and consultants, investment performance for our other programs, and additional information on education program growth and accounts and assets under management.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission for the opportunity to present today. Mike Swink, I'm the Investment Director for Commonwealth Savers Plan. You've heard about markets today from the VRS, so I won't sit here and try and rehash everything. Markets are up year to date. That obviously is a positive. While that is the case, it has been a volatile 2025 that's been driven primarily by tariff policy, geopolitical tensions, and the trajectory of monetary policy. On this chart, for example, the lines show various equity and fixed income indices, and the pink shows the volatility index. So you'll note, the NASDAQ, for example, was down 20% at one point, year to date. It's up year to date now. So while markets remain strong, there's reasons for optimism. There's also reasons for potential concern. I'm going to show in the coming slides how we're set up to achieve objectives in various market conditions. This exhibit shows the target and actual asset allocation of the DB529 fund. Just a reminder, the DB529 is the asset pool that backs obligations under the legacy prepaid tuition program as well as a tuition track portfolio. Primary asset management goals of this program are to meet long-term liabilities and exceed the benchmark over a long period of time. This pie chart shows the asset allocation of that pool, which includes a variety of fixed income alternatives as well as public equities. The mix is currently designed with a goal of meeting or exceeding 5.75% over a long term with an acceptable amount of risk. So I'd call out the core fixed income to tie back to some of the realized and potential market volatility. 20% in that category. These are high quality bonds that could sustain almost 4 years of payouts if a substantial market fallout were to occur, which would buy ample time to not sell other risk assets at depressed prices. The flip side of that is the equities. We have a mix of global equities that would be expected to put up strong returns in a risk-on environment. To round it out, the alternatives are able to be used in this program due to the long-term nature of the liability. The strategy of alternatives is giving up unneeded liquidity for potential excess return, and over time that has been successful. You will note targets and actuals are very close, which is the result of us being long-term investors. Our mandate is not to be tactical and try and make bets on potential short-term market dynamics. Moving on to how the asset allocation has translated to results. The box on the top right shows the net of fees returned since inception, as well as the benchmark for the same period. It shows the current actuarial return assumption for the program. At 6.16% annualized over the program's existence, all long-term objectives have been met. We've exceeded the benchmark, exceeded the actuarial return assumption, and have actually also exceeded realized tuition over that same time frame. It's not on the slide, but that number would be 5.9% over the past 25 years. With a portfolio subject to the markets that includes risk and interest rate sensitive assets, short-term results will vary. The chart on the left shows this. It shows actual returns in the green next to actual return assumption on the blue. So you'll note big jumps to the upside as well as the downside over the years, which is expected. GFC, for example, we were down 16.3%. 2021, the opposite of that, we were up 23.6%. So I would call the fiscal year-to-date return of 6.68 through May, similar to VRS. We don't have final June numbers yet, but we do expect June was a strong month. We know that the numbers will be higher than that 6.68%. So this is higher than the actual return assumption for the fiscal year ending, which will support health of metrics like funded status. That is, of course, positive, but also it's just 1 year, so we don't focus on it too heavily. Last slide I wanted to cover is Invest 529. So Invest 529 is our $10 billion direct sold 529 savings program. This program is managed in-house versus an outsourced record keeper or fund provider. As such, we have a custom target date fund glide path that we construct versus off-the-shelf products. Morningstar rates this plan and consistently gives it high marks. Currently, it's one of their medalist earning funds. This chart shows the performance of those target date funds, which has been strong in the short and long term, both from an absolute and benchmark relative perspective. Portfolios start around 86% equity and migrate down in risk to 100% stable value once the beneficiary is college age. A combination of active and passive management is utilized in this series, And we are extremely cognizant about around the tail end of the glide path, given the potential negative impact of drawdowns prior to participants needing the fund. Recall college savings product, they get spent over 4 years. 40% of this program's assets are in this category, so wanted to call it out. Much of the rest of the programs in passive options, which are achieving their objectives of tracking a benchmark. This concludes the prepared remarks I had, but Mary and I are happy to take any questions the commission may have, or I can follow up directly with anyone as no time is short today. Again, I want to thank the commission for the opportunity to present.
Okay. I'm looking for hands.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Eben, my good friend.
Thank you. For Ms. Morris, I was curious about the Retire Path enrollment of 16,000 Virginia workers now saving. I'm wondering if that's what we'd hoped it would be. I recognize it's only been 2 years, but I'm wondering, are there marketing efforts to eligible workers, or is that reliant on the employers who are enrolling folks?
So yes, primarily the activity is working through employers because they're the ones we depend on to auto-enroll their employees. So most of our efforts have been in that regard, although we have done outreach and we speak to a lot of community groups. We talk to financial advisors, we talk to lawyers, we talk to other individuals who will work with people who will let them know about this program. So, we do a mixture of that and try to get the word out about the importance of planning and saving for all types of things, including retirement. And but most of the work is done through the employers at this point.
I'm going to follow up.
And if I could follow up, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman. Ms. Morris, I was just wondering, is 16,000 about where you hope to be now, or are we hoping that it's going to ramp up further? I know you're constrained in that the smallest employers can't participate, but I'm just wondering if 16,000 is where we hope to be, or if we have a forecast for the future.
It actually is, and we worked with Pew Trust, who has been a good partner. They did a lot of modeling. They've worked with other similar programs across the country. We were the first southern state to open a state-facilitated retirement program. We were the 7th, I think, overall program. We're up to about half of the states have adopted these types of programs now, and they ran some projections, and we're actually ahead. Slightly, I would say by maybe 10 to 15%, we're ahead of projections for participation as well as assets under management. So I'd say it's going as expected and even a little bit better. And they're in the process of redoing those numbers and really taking a look at it. And yes, I do think one of the constraints, there's, I think, sometimes confusion because not only do we have a requirement, and we're the only state right now, I think that has the 20, I think everyone else has moved to a lower threshold for numbers of employees. But in addition to having a 25-person employee threshold, they also have to work on average 30 hours a week. So essentially it only includes full-time workers. And when you have complexities like that, it makes employers stand off a little bit. But the biggest thing is just getting employers to know about this. And so I think we're making good success. And again, working through the local chambers, working through Rotary clubs and Ruritan clubs, and we go to conferences. We know that the employers that over-index in not offering retirement savings tend to be in agriculture, so we go to some, industry types of programs there, retail sales, construction, and so we try to hit those types of conferences to talk to those employers and employees to get the word out about the program and then to encourage enrollment.
Thanks to everyone involved in the work on it. Thank you.
So can an employer with less than 25 employees offer this, even though it's not required for them to?
They can't.
They cannot.
That's the problem. They cannot. I've told some, and I think some people have done it. We said, if people find out about it, their employees can come in because an individual can open an account, which is why I say a gig worker can participate. But again, as we've been just trying to ramp up information and get employers to participate, we've had limited opportunities to reach out more broadly to those individuals. The mandate is more for participating at work, but we'll hope to do that. And so if someone hears about it and they only have 5 employees, they could talk about it. They can mention the program, but they can't, support it because that would violate ERISA, federal ERISA rules.
So anybody can open up a 401k. No matter who they work for, but it doesn't have the benefit of being deducted from their paycheck, which is disciplined savings is what has probably saved most of us, you know.
Right. Well, and that was my point. People are 15 times more likely to participate if it's available at work and if it's done automatically. And I'll say, the way this works, the employer auto-enrolls all of their employees. And then that's all the employer has to do. They simply do a file. A lot of them are integrated with payroll providers. And then the employee, we give them notice. They have about 30 days to decide. They always have the opportunity to opt out. But if they don't take action, they automatically stay enrolled, and it's a 5% contribution to the retirement account. They can take it down, they can take it up to as much as 10%, and we have annual increases of 1% up to a maximum 10%. I will say we have about a somewhere just below 75% stick rate. So when the employees are enrolled, the vast majority of them are staying. And the same thing has happened. We've had one year, and it's not that many accounts, but we have done an auto escalation, and virtually all of them have left it at that 6%. Okay. So the results, I think, are really encouraging. This is generational change. It'll take time, but it's a really good start.
Okay, terrific.
Okay.
Any further questions for Ms. Marshall? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Certainly. See you next year. Mr. Greer.
Mr. Chairman, that does conclude today's agenda. I just have a few very brief announcements. First, in consultation with you, we've decided to cancel the September meeting of JLARC. Therefore, the next meeting of JLARC will be Monday, October the 6th. At that meeting, we plan to present the findings from our review of community colleges, as well as capital construction and maintenance. And finally, the Study Topic Selection Subcommittee, which is chaired by Delegate Simon, will meet on October 6th at noon, immediately after the full commission meeting. We'll send out an email shortly confirming the meeting to the members of the subcommittee. If you're not on the Topic Selection Subcommittee but have study ideas, I would encourage you to share those with Delegate Simon or me before that meeting. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. Do any members have any final comments on what we're doing here? Okay, terrific. Thanks for everybody's attendance today, and we'll see you in October, if not before somewhere. Thank you very much.